Hello, everyone, and welcome to chapter 198 of The Last Thoughts of a Busy Mind. Sorry there wasn't an episode last week. Personal problems. Basically, a family member had a health scare, and as much as I want this season to not go in the vein of season 13 with a lot of interruptions, this one was a special case. So, yeah. And you might have noticed there isn't a guest at the beginning of this video. Again, scheduling conflicts and all of that. And I just need to get a better grip on things, which will hopefully happen this coming week. But this one is titled, Iran is not a desert. This is something that I have seen mostly in media, especially media depicting Iran. And it's something I want to talk about because I don't think a lot of people do talk about that. My drink today for this episode is Coke Zero. Let me take a sip. Yep, it's Coca-Cola and it's zero. Okay, let's get to it. So, when it comes to geographical location of Iran, Iran is in the Middle East, and thanks to one of the biggest images of Middle East being Saudi Arabia, especially Saudi Arabia's deserts, because Saudi Arabia is in also all deserts, people have come to the conclusion that a lot of Middle East in general is just deserts. Now, that is not untrue. A lot of it is deserts, including Iran. A majority of Iran's geographical location is just deserts. But people seemingly have no idea how people live in deserts, and B, it's not all of it. This is where we get to what I said about media representation. Anytime Iran is in a media property, whether it's a TV show or a movie or something, it is usually shown as a desert climate, and that is just untrue. Even when they're showing Tehran, and Tehran very famously is not a desert. It's not even near one. It's near a mountain. Did you know Iran has mountains? Because seemingly a lot of media doesn't know that. So whenever they want to show Iran, they first of all they do the yellow tint, the Middle East yellow tint. Everything in Middle East apparently is yellow. And they all show just a sand dune or a desert or camels, despite the fact that even in Iranian deserts, camels are not as widely used as horses. Yes, we have a lot of horse riders than we do camel riders. These are things that generally, one of the things this season I want to talk about misunderstanding Iran, can be wrapped up in Orientalism. People have a very Orientalist view of Middle East still to this day, and media properties do just amplify that. There are lots of different examples of it, from clothing to accents to, again, showing the climate. For the clothing, I mean, it's obvious. I'm sure you've known this. If you don't, I'm just going to tell you. People in desert climates don't show a lot of skin, no matter how your Western ideas want to talk about desert beauties. They don't show a lot of skin because they get fucking burnt. So if you want to show a desert climate, have people cover up their skin. Not just women, men too. People don't just walk around shirtless, because the thing about desert is that it's not the sea. There isn't a lot of moisture in the air. You will get burnt a lot if you don't cover up your body with some sort of clothing. That's why the traditional Arabic clothing and the traditional clothing of people who live in desert climates in Iran is very, very, very much covering all of their bodies, including their heads, because they have to. So yeah, that's when it comes to clothing mostly. And Prince of Persia was one of the worst examples of that, but we will get to that, because one of the reasons Sands of Time is the way it is because of Orientalist views. And so, yeah, that is part of it. And then some of it is the accent. Everyone in Middle East speak Arabic, including no matter where they are, which is kind of wrong, but I already talked about that in the last 2 episodes of this season. Because, well, not everyone here is an Arab, and secondly, not everyone speaks Arabic. There are people who don't even speak Persian. Can you believe that? They speak Kurdish or Turkish or Lori. Some of them don't even know how to speak Arabic or Persian because they don't have to. But yeah, this is where we get to the Orientalist view. It is much easier if you couple up Middle East as one thing, as one monolithic thing. That is the whole idea of Orientalism. They are there and they are all the same. That's why we get to the idea of misunderstandings, and that's why we get to the idea of monolithic representations. Whether it is a monolithic representation of politics, whether it is a monolithic representation of race and ethnicity or language, and whether it is a monolithic representation of climate, because it is much easier to look over there, look in the map, and say, well, those people there live in the desert, than it is to understand that, no, they live in a variety of climates, because then you will have to think about them. And the whole idea of Orientalism is to just think about people in the narrow mindset that you want to think about them. Otherwise, why would you think about them? Or more importantly, why would you think of them as people? Because when you think of other people as people, things tend to happen. For example, you may not be as easy about bombing them. You may not feel as easy in mistreating them. You may not feel as easy at deporting them. That's the idea. That is also apparent for Iranians, because a lot of people in Iran imagine Afghanistan as this barren wasteland. And they don't understand that for the longest chunk of history in Iran, the capital was in Herat. So it might have been fucking good. So, okay, sorry. And, Samarkand was also in Afghanistan, you know that? And even Tajikistan, we had, I think, Bukhara is in Tajikistan. Anyways, this is the idea, because when you reduce everything to a simple, a monolithic image, it is easier to mistreat people from there and to mistreat the ideas from there, because, well, they don't know any better. The people who live in a desert climate have always lived in a desert climate. They don't care if the global warming is happening. They're already used to it. They don't care if things or other things are happening to them. They're used to it. They're used to the hardship. They're used to that. So we can mistreat them, because when you think of them as desert people, you don't have to think about them as humans. This is where also we get to the idea that a lot of media just loves monolithic views of complete different cultures, Even Dune is kind of responsible for that, Even though they took a lot from us in the Middle East, they ended up just depicting desert people. And that is wrong. Iran is not a desert country. No country is actually a desert country. Kuwait might be, but even that is wrong, because they have a lot of beaches. They're near the water. No country is small enough or monolithic enough to be considered a desert country. So consider this your primer if you are from the West listening to this, which I doubt it, but maybe you are. There are 2 massive deserts in Iran. That is correct. They are usually in the center. My city, Esfahan, is in a desert, the city I was born in. Yazd is in a desert. Shiraz is near a desert. These are cities that are near deserts, and they are massive. There is a lot of Iran that is desert, but that is not all of it. You get to the north, you get to mountains, to a very huge mountain range, with the biggest mountain in Iran, Damavand, being in that. And when you move past the mountains themselves being kind of cold-ish. I mean, global warming is fucking everything up, but kind of cold-ish. And then you move past that, between the mountain and the Caspian Sea is mostly greenery. There are jungles, there are marshes, there is a lot of beautiful nature there, and it's kind of green in a sense that you probably think of when you think of, European jungles. But that's the part where they don't show too much of it in media. That is also correct for Iranians who make media as well. People like Majid and Majidi and stuff like that, they love desert. They fucking adore desert climates, and they love the Orientalist view of Iran as a desert because deserts are very hard to live in. It's much easier to live in a marsh or in the jungle than it is to live in the desert. And so it kind of follows their idea of Iranians are hard-working people who can live in unlivable situations. Majid Majidi loves that. And fuck him. I genuinely mean it. I really dislike him. So, and then you get to the west, northwest of Iran, where Azeri people are, as you remember from the first season, are mostly mountainous. They're very cold. Again, global warming is fucking that up, but they are cold. They are so cold that, okay, I have to tell you about something which I know is Iranian. I know outside of Iran it's not very used, which is water ACs or water coolers, not in the sense that, thing that cools water, but an AC unit which uses water. So the idea is there is a motor that distributes air, but that air goes through a layer of straw that is wetted with water. The air going through the straw gives up its heat to the water, and then so the air is cooled. And that's what we use in Iran to cool our houses. And cities in the northwest of Iran, they just didn't have that because they didn't think in their wildest of ideas that the air would be so hot that they need an AC unit. So they just didn't add that. That's how cold it is up there. And then you get to the west, again, another mountain range, and with it is different kind of plains. I mean plains not in a sort of desert dunes and all of that. I mean flatlands, plains, flatlands, grassy plains. And then you get to the south and there is just beaches because that's where the Persian Gulf is. And there is a lot of different climates, but you condense that to a desert. And with it comes a lot of things. As I said, the image of deserts is usually the image of ruin. And there are a lot of ruins in deserts of Iran. That's where most of our history is. Shiraz is where most of our history, especially BC history, lives. And so with all of that, an image is conjured up, which is these lands are already ruined. So what's a couple more bombs there? And that idea conflates itself with, the people who live there, if you just ruin their houses, they can just live there because, they're used to the desert. And that is incorrect. That's the image we get. That's the image people inside of Iran get when they think about Afghanistan, or when they think about Pakistan, or they think about any of our other neighboring countries like Iraq, or Syria, or Gaza. We see them as these already ruined places. So it doesn't matter if we ruin their livelihood. It doesn't matter if we deport them. They're used to that. We can mistreat them. And it is a somewhat, again, racist idea which manifests itself in these monolithic views. Basically, whenever you think about a group of people living in a certain area of the world and your idea is just monolithic of them, you need to kind of reevaluate that. When we think of Scandinavia, all we think about is snow. When we think of Africa, all we think about is heat. When we think about Middle East, all we think about is desert. And that is a problem. You might think, oh, so what? What happens if you don't think of them as desert? What happens? Let me bring it back to something very Iranian oriented, because again, misunderstanding Iran is both for Iranians and for people outside of Iran looking at Iran. But let's imagine people in Iran look at Afghanistan and don't look at it as a ruined wasteland. Then you have to understand that people who live there are used to certain creature comforts. They're used to comforting homes. They have homes and houses that they don't live in tents. Their lives aren't temporary. They are rooted there. They have roots. They are people with a rich culture, with a rich language, with a rich variety of artistic works. They have their thoughts. They have their families. They have people whose lineage leads to Cyrus the Great in terms of Iranian. They have long, deep roots. And you don't think that if you think of their lives as temporary, if you think of their homes as ruins, if you think of the land as a wasteland. Wasteland, desert are inherently temporary. And that is just not right. Iran is not a desert because it never was a temporary household. There are cities in Iran who live in desert. Yazd is in the middle of a desert. Isfahan didn't used to be a desert because it has a massive fucking river in the middle of it, but now that the river is fucked up, it is in a desert. But people don't just leave it there. You know, people don't just leave. They're not like, okay, this is a desert, we leave. People have learned to grow their roots in desert as well, but that's the idea, because when you think about a desert, you think about tents. You think about people constantly on the move, and people constantly on the move don't usually have much roots. So it's easier for them to move. It's the idea that prompts people to say, well, if you're feeling bad there, why don't you move? Because it's not a desert. It is varied. It's not monolithic. There are lots of things there. There are houses there that have been there before there was anything even representing a monarchy in Iran. There are houses there, there are cultures there that go before there was even in Iran. And you can disregard all of that if you think of us as desert people. If you think of us as freemen in Dune. If you think of us as Prince of Persia thought of us. People in the desert with Arabic influences. Now don't get me wrong, there are a lot of Arabic influences. I'm not saying that's incorrect. I'm just saying that when you think about Iranians and... Sorry about that. That is my phone. But you know, there is only a minute left, so I'm going to talk about that and then just go answer my phone. The thing is that there are a lot of Arabic influences, don't get me wrong, but as I talked about, people in Iran don't speak Arabic. We are not a desert. No country in the Middle East is. I think I should have gone from misunderstanding Iran to misunderstanding Middle East. Because a lot of things I'm talking about in Iran is applicable to a lot of other places. Afghanistan, even though technically not Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Syria, Palestine. You think about these places as deserts, so people in them are desert people. They can move. They can move out of their homes, they can sever their culture and their roots, and they can move elsewhere. And we can bomb them in the way. Fucking hell. Sorry I got a bit angry, but you know, that does tend to happen. See you next week.